make a point that I had an argument against, I would raise my hand, find the relevant 3x5 card, and voice my objection. Each and every time, my professor would calmly and effortlessly expose the weakness or factual incorrectness of my objection, and then move on. I quickly surmised that I wasn't the first fundamentalist Christian this professor had tangled with. By the third or fourth class, some students began to complain about my persistent questioning. It was an annoying distraction, they claimed, and, looking back at it, they were completely right. To my great surprise, however, this professor actually defended me. It's always good to critically re-examine our foundational assumptions in science, he would say with a gentle smile. The respectful way this professor interacted with me, despite my obnoxious questioning, was itself a challenge to my faith. From my Pentecostal church, I had inherited the baseless assumption that any professor who taught evolution must be a godless, mean, and anti-Christian person. This gracious professor was blowing apart this absurd fundamentalist stereotype, and it frankly irritated me. I wanted so badly not to like him. Looking back on it, I think it was the kindness of this professor that produced the first crack in my religious experience-based certainty. Apparently, not everything my church believed was true. It took me a little less than 4 weeks to burn through all my flashcards and, much to the delight of my fellow students, to finally shut up. By the time the course ended, 9 weeks later, I saw no way of denying that the Earth was several billion years old or that humans were the product of a 560 million year evolutionary process. As painful as it was for me to admit, the evidence was simply irrefutable. Unfortunately for me, I still believed what my pastor had taught me. If the Earth wasn't created in 6 literal days, then the whole Bible may as well be a book of lies. Convinced that the Earth wasn't created in 6 literal days, I felt I had no choice but to reject the book of lies. My biology class might have sufficed to topple my faith by itself, but it didn't need to try. It received strong assistance from another freshman course I attended called The Bible as Literature. Unlike my biology class, it never occurred to me that this class would challenge my faith. In fact, since I had already read the entire Bible and heard a year's worth of sermons on it, I assumed this would probably be the easiest 3 credits I'd ever earn. They ended up being the hardest. As I will share in the first chapter, this course convinced me that the Bible contained a multitude of errors, contradictions, and historical inaccuracies, as well as morally offensive material. And as was the case when I reluctantly accepted the theory of evolution, I assumed this meant I had to abandon my faith and return to my pre-Christian atheism and the meaninglessness of life that came with it. It devastated me. I sunk into the deepest and longest depression of my life. I'll pick up that story in the following chapter. Countless numbers of young and occasionally older evangelical Christians have gone through something similar to what I went through. First, they base their faith on a supposedly inerrant Bible. They then take a course or read a book or talk to an informed person who demonstrates to them that the Bible contains errors. Consequently, they lose their faith. And while I obviously found my way back to the faith and managed to eventually make sense of these problems in the Bible, this is, after all, what this book is all about, many who lose their faith over these problems do not. One of the reasons I decided to write this book is because I would love to see this unnecessary tragedy stop repeating itself. Unlike many who consider themselves evangelicals, broadly defined, I don't believe the way to do this is by trying to explain away or downplay the Bible's errors or by continually redefining what an error is. Rather, the way to stop this, I believe, is to subvert the assumption that the divine inspiration of the Bible is incompatible